Danton Heinen felt kind of like a throw-in to the Igor Chinikov trade, but actually he turned out to be a pretty good depth piece for the Blue Jackets, and they should keep him around next year. We're going to discuss this on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Let's talk about Danton Heinen. He's the next guy on my list of UFAs. And I think he is an unimportant but vaguely necessary piece, I think. And by that, I don't mean that Danton Heinen himself is necessary, but the kind of player that he is necessary, right? So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about his season as a whole, like how the trade turned out. And I also want to look at shout out to Denton Matejchuk and Matthew Olivier for being named to their respective World Championship teams. So actually, we'll start off with that. We'll get it out of the way. Denton Matejchuk is going to be playing for Team Canada in the World Championships, joining Jet Greaves, which I love. More excitingly, I think, for many people, Matthew Olivier is going to be playing for Team USA, which I think rules. This is going to be, I believe, Denton Matejchuk's adult debut for Team Canada. Obviously, he's played for the World Juniors before. I believe was a captain for World Juniors 1 year. But this, I believe, will be his first foray into the adult tournament. This is going to be Matthew Olivier's first international action ever, which I think is what a lot of people were surprised that he played for Team USA. Obviously, born in Missouri, first NHL player to be born in Missouri, I believe. Biloxi icon, Matthew Olivier, and obviously Quebecois dad, grew up in Quebec. But I guess Team USA gave him a call and was like, "Hey, do you want to play?" He's got dual citizenship, obviously being born in the USA, and I guess he said yes, which I think rules. I'm always a big fan of like guys getting to play for the national team for the first time at like 28, 29, 30 years old. I think it's so much fun. I don't know what Team USA is going to do. I don't know if they're going to do much of anything. Obviously, they won the gold medal last year, but they had a pretty heavy duty squad, and I don't think they're going to have a lot of the heavy duty guys this year. But I think this is going to be fun for Olivier. I did think that maybe Jet Greaves was going to be the only Blue Jacket that was going to be at Worlds. Now we have a couple of guys to cheer for. It was also confirmed Elvis Merzlikins is not going to be playing for Team Latvia for personal reasons. Which I guess, I mean, they asked him and he said no. We don't know what those personal reasons are. I'm not going to speculate. I have some ideas, but I don't think speculation is fair in this case. So Team USA gets Matthew Olivier, which I'm sure lots of people are thrilled about. A friend is already looking up how to get a Matthew Olivier Team USA jersey, which I think is funny. And then we got Matejchuk and Greaves on Team Canada. So hopefully they'll meet in the gold medal match, but they're playing on opposite sides of the bracket, so they will only meet in the gold medal match. Is my assumption. So that's fun. Just a quick little side to start the episode with. Let's talk about Danton Heinen though, who needs a new contract. He came over as part of the Igor Chinikov trade that has now gone round the world twice, and everyone and their mother has an opinion on it because Chinikov shot at like 25% in the 40 games he played for the Penguins, mostly on Evgeny Malkin's wing. But Igor Chinikov got traded to the Penguins in exchange for Danton Heinen, a second-round pick and a third-round pick. I still feel pretty good about that trade. Chinikov, this is not going to turn into a dumping on Chinikov segment, but the Blue Jackets got a usable depth piece, a second and a third-round pick for a guy that, frankly, is known for being kind of hot and cold. So Hasn't performed in the playoffs thus far. Not many of the Penguins have, in fairness, but I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a slam dunk win for Kyle Dubas and the Penguins until we see what he's like next season. You know, this could just be a new team bump. Maybe it is him blossoming into the player that he should have been in Columbus and wasn't. I don't know, but I do think he probably got a little bit of help by, again, getting to play a lot of his minutes with Evgeny Malkin. So, anyway, this is not about Chilikov. This is about Danton Heinen, who I was kind of ambivalent about. I was like, yeah, sure, throw him in the minors. Like he played a couple of games for Cleveland, got called up, and actually turned into one of the better defensive forwards on the team. He is a real old-fashioned kind of fourth line player, right? Of his job is to make sure things don't happen. Which I think is why, again, there's been a lot of cognitive dissonance between the fourth line this season. You know, obviously Ken Johnson spent a bunch of time there, Dmitry Voronkov spent a bunch of time there. You know, two players who I would argue it is their job to try and do things. Unfortunately, they're playing mostly with players like Danton Heinen and Isaac Lundestrom, and both of their jobs is to make sure that things don't happen. So they're really kind of playing a push-pull type of system here on the fourth line. But Danton Heinen in his minutes was pretty good. Overall, 52% shot attempt share, 58% share of the goals, 59% share of the expected goals. Winning his minutes pretty convincingly. It is mostly a case of, if I flip over to hockeyviz.com and look at his little player chart there, it is almost entirely that he is making things not happen for the other team. He is 13% better than average defensively, which again doesn't sound like a lot, but I believe the best player, you know, quote unquote best player in the league this season, which probably is Nathan MacKinnon. I don't really have a horse in that particular race. But if you look at again, 13% doesn't sound like a lot, but Nate MacKinnon in his minutes this season was plus 11% better on the power play and plus 38% better on at even strength. So even arguably the best player in the league this season was only 40% better than league average. So being a 13% better than league average at defense for a fourth liner, I think is pretty good. So Danton Heinen, very good defensively, fine offensively, didn't create a lot, but the stuff that he did create, I thought was good. Gets a lot of accusations about just like being out there and doing cardio. And I'm like, okay, but listen, he's not supposed to be doing things. He's one of those players that you only notice if mistakes are made. And you don't notice him a lot. And that's a good thing for a guy like Heinen. I do think the one issue I have with Heinen is that the coaching staff loves to try and sneak him out into the top six when they think we're not looking. And it doesn't super work because, again, his job is not to create, it's to smother the other team's offense. And I don't think that works particularly well with, you know, for example, he took a spin with Marchenko and Fantilli for a minute there. And their job is extremely to create things. So again, it was a real push-pull situation. But when he's playing at the level he's supposed to be doing, when he's playing the minutes he's supposed to be playing, when he's playing the role he's supposed to be playing, Danton Heinen is very, very good at what he does. Again, he's not as flashy as Chilikov, so it looks not quite as impressive. Chilikov, I think, had 20 goals for the Penguins this year. But Heinen did his job. He did it for a very respectable price, and I think that the Blue Jackets should be able to keep him around for, I would say, probably about as much as he's making now, maybe even a little bit less. But with the cap going up, he's going to be making, I would say, probably about the same percentage of the cap. So I am going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll talk about what that means in terms of percentage of the cap, because it's not complicated, but I wanted to roll by some thoughts that I had real quick. So we'll do that in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Warby Parker. Spring is here. Weddings, trips, rooftop hangs. Basically, there's a lot more photos getting taken. And if you wear glasses, you're going to be wearing them in all of these moments. If you don't love your frames, you are going to feel it pretty quickly. That's why Warby Parker helps out. They've completely changed how easy it is to find glasses that you actively like. Their virtual try-on lets you see how frames look on your face right from your phone. All you got to do is point your camera and you can try on tons of styles in real time. My wife recently got glasses from Warby Parker. She loves them. I think they look great. They were super easy to get and they were super affordable as well. Prescription glasses start at just $95. So you don't have to sacrifice style or quality for price. They've got everything in one place as well. She ended up getting both glasses and prescription sunglasses for an extremely reasonable price. And the prescription lenses have anti-reflective, scratch-resistant coatings, which is great because she's real bad at forgetting that she has her engagement ring on and rubbing her face and scratching whatever is there. So I personally am a big fan of the scratch-resistant coatings because it means the glasses last a little bit longer. It's the perfect time to upgrade your glasses for spring. Buy one prescription pair and get 20% off any additional prescription pairs at warbyparker.com/lockedonnhl. That's 20% off additional prescription pairs when you go to warbyparker.com/lockedonnhl. I've also got to tell you about Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing. The one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. It helps you reach the people you actually feel you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to their worldwide data. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Less stress, less time, better results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show are going to get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. I also want to thank you for making us your number one listen. I already said that. What am I saying? I would like to let you know about the Everydayers Club. There we go. The Everydayers Club is found at lockedonbluejackets.supercast.com and it's just $5 a month. And what you're going to get is ad-free episodes of this show. So if you want to avoid hearing the ads that you just did, you can do that for just $5 a month. I think it's a pretty good deal. And they also have a bunch of other cool perks as well. Exclusive Discord where you can chat to me and other hosts and an exclusive Locked On merch store as well, which I also think is super neat. Just go to lockedonbluejackets.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes. Nailed that promo. Let's talk about Danton Heinen and the salary cap because I pulled up some numbers that I futzed with back in March, and right now Danton Heinen is making $2.25 million, which is basically nothing in the salary cap world, right? I would be perfectly okay with him getting the same amount, potentially a little bit more. Again, I don't think it's a good idea to give him a long-term deal, and I don't think he'll get a long-term deal. But if you want to throw like 2 years at him, then 1 year, 2 years, go for it. And here's why. He is a low-risk, medium-reward veteran. I don't really think he blocks a young player coming in the same way that some other players do. Like, I am perfectly happy. Would I rather have Luka Delbo-Baluz in the lineup over Danton Heinen? Sure. But I'm not as frustrated at it as I am by someone like Miles Wood taking up ice time when someone like Luka Delbo-Baluz is sitting on the bench, right? I think Wood adds way less to the lineup, but he signed long term, so he's going to play because that's how the NHL works. Danton Heinen, as of right now, if he ends up making the same amount of money as he did this year, which I would be fine with. I would even be fine with giving him a little bit more money, frankly. So, maybe even going up to 2.5 million. That is going to be approximately 3% of the cap, if my math is right. And that is an important number because if you look at the salary cap, which is 104 million, you've got 23 players to fit under there. So average salary should be 4.5 million because that's what 4.5 times 23 is 104. near enough, right? So obviously you're going to get players that will get significantly more than that, right? Like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Blue Jackets, 8 Blue Jackets, including Elvis, that are making more than that right now, right? But if a team is making, if a player is making less than that, then they are below league average, and that is great because that frees up the money to pay your big players, right? Essentially, if a player's contract takes up less than 4.3% of the cap, that's a win in my books. And as of next year, that 4.3% is about $4.5 million. So anyone making under $4.5 million is making below league average, which is good. And I would be more than happy with Danton Heinen making, again, 2.5. I don't know that I would go as high as, I might go as high as 3. Again, the rising cap means that money is kind of skew-if. And the Blue Jackets have a ton to play with. I'm not going to go through the cap math again, but they have like $40 million to pay 8 players. One of those players is Fantilli, yes. One of those players is Jack Reeves. But they got some room. And I'm okay with, again, I worry that adding Heinen is again another 30-plus-year-old option. But again, he's kind of a necessary option. And I think, frankly, at the rate that this is going, $2.5 to $3 million is just kind of how much a depth player costs now. We're still in that, and I say we, I mean definitely including myself in this, we're still in that kind of sticker shock part of it, right? Of like, oh my god, how much this player is getting, how much, and it's just because the cap is going up, and inflation is real for the NHL as well, right? The cap could be going up as high as what did it say in the initial tweet? The NHL is projecting a upper limit of about 123 million by 28-29. So that's a 30 million rise of the cap from right now. That's going to inflate salaries, right? Again, I looked at the numbers of this, and like I believe he wasn't on the roster when I made this tweet, but notable Blue Jackets contracts that in 2028, when the cap is 130, 120, whatever, Sean Monahan will be making less than 5% of the cap. Garland will be making less than 5%. Olivier will be making 2.4%. Wood 2%. Provorov 7%. Severson 5%. Fabro 3.5%. Like, obviously, players like Werenski, Fantilli, Marchenko, Matejchuk, Greaves are not under contract for that year yet, but that's again 7 players taking up, I think, about 30% of the cap, which is about right if my very quick napkin math is, which it may not be, who can say. But the point I'm making here is that, like, if you want to throw Danton Heinen a contract, it's basically free, right? And it's not, because that's not how money works, but he is that's just how much a depth option costs. If you want a veteran, they're gonna cost that, right? And you're gonna see this kind of across the league, I think, of if a player is not on their minimum salary of their entry level, which I believe entry level contracts are going up to $1 million minimum next season, which again is fine because the cap is going up. But if a player is not on their entry level deal, I think you're going to see replacement level guys getting $2 million, $2.5 million, $3 million as the cap goes up. And Danton Heinen, I think, is better than replacement level. And I am more than happy to give him $3 million next season. If he wants to stay for 2 years, then I would say, yeah, 2.25, 2.5. Again, it comes back down to that battle of term or AAV, right? Do you want more term, or do you want to be paid more for that 1 year? And if he wants to do 1 year, then give him 3. And if he wants to do 2 years, give him 2.5. And it doesn't quite work out in the wash, but also it depends if Danton Heinen wants to stay here, right? Which Don Waddell said all the UFAs want to stay. I'm including Heinen in that. And I think he would be an easy, cheap player to lock up. And again, you could put him in your bottom 6 and not super have to worry about him. The Blue Jackets right now, they have 14 forwards on their salary cap, including Heinen. So they are going to have to shed somewhere, because if they want to bring guys like Pucher up, they want to bring guys like Luca Del Bell's up, and obviously they're not going to still have. They're not going to be able to move on from guys like Wood. All 14 of these guys, if the UFAs stay, are going to be on the roster. Like potentially, Jenna is going to move on. That frees up a spot. If Marshmont moves on, that frees up a spot. The Blue Jackets have said that they've shown that they're happy to carry extra players, and I think. If they can squeeze 13 forwards in if they can squeeze 14 forwards and 7 defensemen, they've rolled 8 defensemen for a lot of this year, and I can't imagine they'll do that again if they have to, because that's, I don't know, I would much rather carry 14 forwards and 7 defensemen, I think, just for, I don't know, weird personal reasons that I don't super want to articulate, because it doesn't really make a difference. But the point I'm making here is that there is a room for Danton Heinen on this roster, and I think he should be here. Again, it's a real kind of, we're quibbling about a fourth liner. Again, I have no issue with him as long as he stays on the fourth line. That's the worry, right? Is that Danton Heinen comes in and they're like, oh my God, he can play on the second line. He's so versatile. And I'm like, well, no, that's how you end up with Boone Jenner. That's how you end up with another Boone Jenner, and that's not what we want. We don't want another Boone Jenner. We want a Danton Heinen. That being said, I do think that bringing in or keeping Heinen is another piece in the do they need to keep Boone Jenner around puzzle. And I talked about this a little bit when I did the Coyle episode earlier this week, but I will talk a little bit about I'll talk a little bit about Heinen as well after the break. Let's go up in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about Kalshi. The hunt for the Stanley Cup is on, and you can trade every game on Kalshi. Every single playoff game, every series, the conference finals, and even the championship. There's a lot of great games happening tonight. And when I say a lot of great games, I mean there is 2 great games. So Pittsburgh and Philadelphia play, and Montreal and Tampa Bay play. And if I was you, I would pick Tampa Bay. Of those 4 teams, they have a 62% chance to win, which means a $100 trade will pay out $157 if they win, which I think is a pretty good deal. If you want to go for the underdogs, you can, but my money is going to be on Tampa Bay. And as the playoffs are heating up, these numbers are going to move in real time, and you can buy in or out any time. On Kalshi, you are trading against peers in a live market, which means there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 whenever you trade $10. KALSHI. Kalshi, trade on anything. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's finish up real quick with my, I don't know if it's a hot take that keeping Heinen makes Jenner expendable, but similar to keeping Coyle, where Coyle does a lot of things that Jenner does, but better, I think Heinen does a lot of things that Jenner does, but for cheaper. And that's a good combo. If you can get Coyle and Heinen to stick around, then you've basically replaced the entirety of Boone Jenner plus some for, it's going to cost you more because of Coyle, but you're going to get more because of Heinen, right? I think Heinen does a lot of the physical play that Jenner does. I think he is the defensive forward that I think this organization thinks Jenner is. Again, will he fall off a cliff next season? Maybe, but I'm not super convinced by that. He's been pretty consistent, barring the 1 year he spent in Vancouver where everyone was very bad. He's been pretty consistent the last 4 or 5 seasons in terms of he's been an extremely good defensive forward. And again, 13% better than league average. If you flip over to Jenner, he is 11% worse than league average at defense. Jenner creates a lot of offense, yes, but if you want to solidify the defense in your bottom 4, then Heinen is is the way to go. Now, I will say Heinen is a winger as opposed to a center. He's listed as left wing and center on Puckpedia, which I guess means that he can probably win faceoffs if they need him to. But I'm not. I don't think we need him to. I think if the combination of Fantilli, Coyle, Monahan, Lundestrom is fine. And if you want to put Jenner on the wing, then again, Heinen does a lot of the things that Jenner does at wing, but wins his minutes in a much more convincing and much less stressful way. Boone Jenner has a real kind of "we may win, but I may die" attitude towards it, which is Hockey Viz's kind of low effort version of saying that creates a lot and also allows a lot. Heinen doesn't create a lot, but also doesn't allow much at all. So he lives in very much firmly in the boring section of the chart. But I would much rather my fourth line be boring than "we may win, but I may die." Frankly, save the "we may win, but I may die" for like the Werenski Fantilli on ice combination. Just saying. So overall, to kind of wrap my thoughts up on this, I would keep Heinen. I think he would be a smart, low-effort bet. I think he brings, again, a lot of defensive stability that you're not going to get from a player that is making much less money. And I think if you want to put Heinen and Lundestrom on that fourth line, then just find... I think Puccia would actually be a perfect addition to that fourth line. If you can have a fourth line of Mikhail Puccia, Isaac Lundestrom, and Danton Heinen, I think that's a really, really solid fourth line. And then figure out the top nine from there. And, it should probably be, again, assuming everybody stays, then you've got a top nine of Coyle, Monahan, Fantilli. You've got Johnson, Garland, Marchment, Sillinger, Olivier, and one other player, Voronkov, probably. I don't think I'm missing anyone. I might be missing someone. I don't know if I said Marchenko. But your top nine is set. Bring up Mikhail Puccia, leave Miles Wood in the press box, and go from there. That's my opinion on the fourth line, which again is a real low stakes kind of, we have to figure out the fourth line. If the problem is the fourth line, then everything else is fine. Then that's a real kind of champagne problem to have. But obviously the Blue Jackets have bigger issues than just the fourth line. But if you can figure out your fourth line, so you can stop worrying about it and just throw them out there and know that they're probably not going to allow a goal. Great. That is a weight off of many people's backs, I'm sure. So keep Danton Heinen around. Throw him a 1-year contract, 2-year contract, 2 million, 3 million, whatever. Profit, I think. Anyway, we're going to finish up this series tomorrow. We're going to talk about the final UFA. We're going to talk about Eric Gudbranson and, his season review, whether he should stay. If he does stay, what's his role? How much should he be getting paid? If they move on from him, what are the options, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's all coming up tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Once again, check out the Everydayers Club if you haven't already. LockedOnBlueJackets.supercast.com, and go head over to Twitter. We are over there as well at LO_Blue Jackets. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.